From Uttar Pradesh to Rajasthan to Andhra Pradesh, the ship of Y Engineering series has now docked at the state of Gujarat. The state we all have been looking at, which has given us the latest Prime Minister of this country, the state which has been given global recognition for its innovative, industrious, and incredible interventions. Today we welcome Professor Akshay Agrawal, who is the founder, Vice Chancellor of the Gujarat Technological University, which got founded in the year 2008. And in the last 6 years, the university has made its global mark by a series of interesting interventions. We have Professor Agrawal, who would be discussing with us more about what is happening at GTU, as the entire globe has been watching as to what all fantastic interventions have been going on in the state of Gujarat. Not very far away from this place, at Hotel Ashok, is the Gujarat Bhavan, where the future Prime Minister of India is waiting to be sworn in on the 26th of this month. We, at this solemn occasion, we invite Professor Agrawal again to this episode of Y Engineering. We welcome you, sir.
Thank you.
So before we move on, our viewers are very interested to know as to what is special at the educational model of Gujarat Technological University.
You see, Gujarat Technological University is a little different from the others because it has tried to transcend the limitations which were there on our technical education. For example, our first group of students in the final year was to join in 2011 August. Therefore, on 2nd August 2010, we established what we call as GTU Innovation Council. This Innovation Council is probably today the most active innovation council in the whole country. We established 25 GTU Innovation Sankuls. We divided the whole state into 25 geographical areas. In each Sankul committee, we have the principals of all the colleges in that particular area. And every Sankul committee is co-chaired by one industry leader and one academic leader. The purpose of each Sankul is to establish a close relationship between the working of the university and the working of the industry. In the very first year, for example, when our students went into final year, before that during the summer, we tried to send all our students into the industry. So more than 40,000 students visited the industry and tried to locate a problem which will improve a product or a process. Now, we concentrated on small and medium enterprises because large industries usually will have problems which probably may not be amenable to immediate solution by a young student. Small and medium enterprises do not have their own research and development cells, and therefore they usually go on producing goods which they have initially designed. And then as long as those goods are marketable, they market it and then they close down.
So while the other universities have been talking about the real industry academy interface, GTU delivered it with the first batch of its students.
Exactly. Out of 17,000 projects which were done in the first year, 13,000 projects were based in the industry.
Okay.
And what is more, after the projects were presented for examination in 2012, 1900 industries gave in writing that they have benefited from these projects. So they got a free service from our students. Some better product, some better process was developed by our students.
And what was the impact on the employability of that graduating batch?
You see, the advantage is that these students who have worked in the industry, they already know the environment in the industry. So many times the industry, when they interview these students, would say, well, this fellow does not know anything about the industry. In our case, at least the students who worked on those 13,000 projects were not having that particular issue. The other 4,000 also visited the industry, but they didn't find a project over there. So they took up a project defined by the university professor. But they also did visit the industries for trying to find a project. Now, please understand that we in our country have not had a relationship with the industry as far as the universities are concerned. Therefore, there is a difficulty not only in the industrial environment, we also have difficulty on our side. Many of our teachers have no experience of industry, or I would say a large majority of them. And therefore, they may not be very keen to allow the students to go to the industry. On the other hand, I'll tell you, for example, a situation which occurred in one of the industrial estates. It is actually Vatwa Industrial Estate in Ahmedabad. One of the industries, when our students went there, would not allow our students to come in. Now, naturally, when all the students were asked, he would have 10 or 20 students going to the industry and asking whether he would be allowed to get in. So this fellow put up a notice board outside. After receiving 2-3 times a group of students, no GTU students allowed. We had already signed an MOU with the Vatwa Industrial Estate. So when I was informed about it, I telephoned the chairman of the Vatwa Industrial Estate and I asked him, how come that this is happening? He said, sir, we have 4,000 industrial units. There will be some who will not like it. But please don't worry, any student who has a problem can come to the Vatwa Industrial Estate office and we will see that he goes to an industry where they are received. And therefore, what the industrial estate did was, they put outside the office of the industrial estate a bigger notice saying GTU students are welcome.
Okay.
So you see, the point is, in Gujarat, for example, there are 2.5 lakh small and medium enterprises which are registered. Now, GTU has something like 50 to 60,000 students today in the final year. Usually 2 or 3 students do the project.
Okay.
Therefore, we require not more than 18 to 20,000 industries. So, it's not required that each one of those industries should cooperate. We also understand that these industries have had no experience of working with universities. They have never derived any benefit from the universities. Hence, it will take them some time to understand that interaction with us is mutually beneficial.
So just a curiosity, like this experiment of interfacing with the small and medium enterprises, because India, every nook and corner is filled with such SMEs, every state has its own. But was it the proactive enabling environment of Gujarat, the entrepreneurial spirit of it, that this could happen even in the first year of it? What were the success parameters behind?
It required a lot of passion, a lot of work. For example, the GTU office in the summer worked till late at night. We first of all took SMS for 5 lakh messages. Because we had to send too many messages to the students, to teachers. Within 2 months, we exhausted all the 5 lakh. Then we had to take another group. My young team, you see, I had hired some temporary people. They would work sometimes up to 3 a.m. in the morning, because whatever messages were received on a particular day, whatever difficulties the students had got to be sorted out, and they were supposed to be reassured by morning, so that if they have told us that they have some difficulty, by morning they would get a response from us. Don't worry, we are taking care of it. Or if we have already solved, then we would inform them.
So an enormous amount of hard work probably took GTU to place its first batch of final year students to the industrial clusters across Gujarat. It really shows that the GTU was founded on firm footings of industriousness, and innovation follows suit after that. Sir, our next question is that Gujaratis in particular, they are generally considered to be entrepreneurial in nature and coming from a mercantile spirit and making money out of it. Now, engineering as a discipline is quite involved, and GTU primarily admits the Gujarati students at large. So, what kind of career options, like the two batches which have graduated, the students have generally opted for after graduating?
You see, our objective is that there should be three different streams. One is, of course, students who go for jobs, but another thing is that we want to encourage the entrepreneurial spirit, as you have said, because ultimately this nation is going to be built by new products designed by engineers. Till now, we have, of course, all these things that you are seeing even over here. They are all designed in foreign countries. They may have been produced sometimes in India, but basically none of these products which you see here, the products which you see are at our home from morning till evening, whatever you use, whatever you see in the industries, in offices, they are designed by those 70 crore people in Europe, North America, Japan and South Korea. We are 120 crores. How come that these 70 crore people are able to design everything that we use and we will not be able to design? Of course, there are Indians who have gone to US and designed things.
This very thought, this very question is lacking. Once a Vice Chancellor thinks that solutions would probably come from there.
You see, if Indians have gone to US and designed products which we are using here, why they cannot design it over here? So we feel that this is something which is not really lacking in Indians. It is not that genetically we cannot design new products. It is only this, that we created a system which would kill the creativity of the young people who join the university. In fact, I go on saying that our universities make a good effort to kill creativity and whatever is left out is killed by the industry in the next 5 years. So that if you find an engineer who has spent 5 years in the industry, he will be a good person to manage the labor and the existing machines. He will be no good for designing any new product, because
this is quite a very bold statement and quite unheard of. Like a university Vice Chancellor acknowledging the responsibility on his shoulders is fine, but industry killing the creative spirit of it, would you like to throw further light on it?
I can give you one example, and this is an example which is only some 2-3 years old. I was talking to one of the students who had joined an industry near Ahmedabad, and he came to meet me after about 1 year. On some occasion, he sought an appointment and I gave it to him. And he told me a very interesting story. He said that his industry has collaboration with Germany. When he joined, he was a mechanical engineer. When he joined, he saw that in a particular plate, 3 holes were cut, but only 2 were used. So he asked his supervisor, why are we cutting this 3rd hole? He was told, well, it is our German collaborators who have told so, so we are doing it like that. He couldn't really find the reason. Once again he asked, and he was snubbed. Why is it that you are asking? This is something which Germans have done, it must be good. Then it so happened that after 8 months, a German engineer came, the team from Germany came, and he got an opportunity. He was a young engineer, he might not have got the opportunity, but somehow he was able to get the opportunity of talking to the German engineers. He asked the same question. They said, well, the machine in Germany is having many more features, and this 3rd hole is for the features which you are not using, so you don't have to really cut this 3rd hole. But our engineers will not even think in that direction. Whatever they have copied, well, that's what they have to do, and they do it well.
So you mean to say that the innate originality with which the engineering designers should have functioned, because all our industries in the post-colonial era, whatever 60 years we have seen, not much of original products or the original thought has not been there at the system level?
You see, you just visualize now if this young engineer had been there in that industry for 5 years and he was never asked to, he was never allowed to ask a question. After 5 years, would he dare ask a question? You see,
Like in the classroom, if a student is snubbed by the professor.
so he will not ask questions. And all our Upanishads begin with questions. Please read any Upanishad. It never begins with an answer, because we say prashnena jnanam. You learn by questioning. So if you are going to ensure that nobody asks questions, then you are going to guarantee that his creativity will be spoiled.
So, what mix of the GTU students have opted for jobs or entrepreneurial ventures or other higher end studies and research?
You see, what we have done is that we, in the very first year in 2011, to be exact on 3rd September 2011, we started the process of ensuring that our teachers have information about patenting. So we did many workshops on intellectual property rights. The net result was that many of the teachers, about 3,000 teachers, took training under these workshops. And by the time our students came up with their final project in 2012, they were ready with that information. You see, preliminary patent filing is not very difficult. But of course, if you go to an attorney, he will charge 25,000 rupees, which is appropriate because it is his intellectual property and work. But a preliminary patent can be filed by a student on his own with a little bit of help and in 1,000 rupees. So we helped students file the patents if they wanted, students, professors or colleges. And the net result was that the number of patents filed by our colleges and students became the largest in the very first year of any university in India, including of course our premier institutions. I will not say that those premier institutions must not be doing some great job. Our students were only undergraduate students and naturally their products will be relatively simpler. But they thought it is innovative. They did some preliminary survey of the existing patents and they filed. Of course, world over, in US for example, not more than 15% patents are granted. If 100 people think that their product is innovative and they file, the patent office does not grant them patents, they will grant to about 15%.
But at least the initiation of it, the very process.
Exactly. So as far as the university is concerned, we can only encourage people and see that they are kept informed about these things. So the number of preliminary patents filed by GTU students and faculty members and colleges has been much more than the number filed by any other university. Now this year then what we have done is we have gone one step ahead. We have said that before you start working on your project, you must study the existing patents. So every student is required to file a report of 5 patents which are approximately in the area in which he is wanting to do the work. That will ensure that he will not be using 1 year of his valuable youth in doing something which is only a copy. So after all, you see, if lakhs of students all over the country simply use their time in copying and do not use their time in any innovative thing, then how can we develop innovative products?
So much so far for the research where you have sensitized the students through the patent process, because if you are eyeing towards the end IP protection, I think the entire line under gets protected. What about the entrepreneurial framework and the normal jobs which students take up in the industry?
You see, therein we have started what we call as student startup support system. We call it S4.
Okay.
Now under S4, we try to ensure that the students learn the processes of ideation, of developing a product, and then of taking it to a level where they can start thinking about marketing ideas. So what we do is we call them at what are called boot camps at weekends, and then we try to talk about these issues. The idea is that they should be familiar with all the different aspects which are required for ultimately taking their product to the market. For example, we have been doing some work on what is called crowd funding, because there are not many angel funds available or venture funds available to university students, and therefore we thought they should also know about crowdfunding. So we have done many workshops on crowdfunding, and in fact one or two students have recently used crowdfunding to obtain some small funds at the very beginning for developing their products. So we are essentially using GTU as a vehicle for giving the information. We are not really having a full-fledged incubator, because an incubator will require a lot more of infrastructure and people to handle the whole thing. So we have, you can say, pre-incubator activities which are very effective. For example, we have these IPR activities, so they get information. Of course, when you have to ultimately go to filing the final patent, you will probably require the help of the attorney. But the first few steps they can do, so therefore there we are helping them.
So it's a research and innovation based entrepreneurship framework which you have administered at GTU.
Exactly.
So what about the employability standards of the end products coming out of GTU? Employability becoming the big specter amongst industry people. What has been the quality of GTU students?
I think the students who have gone to industries and who have worked over there have a much better chance of being accepted by the industry. Now what has happened in our country is that we have started the process of engineering education in fact much earlier than it was done in England. Not many people may be knowing that the regular process of teaching engineering in fact started in England later than the process which was started in India.
So Thomson College of Engineering came first in India?
No, you see, Guindy was the first place where they started regular technician level courses. And at that time such courses were not available even in England, because there the practice was that the student will work as an apprentice and then there will be a CNG kind of exam which will certify them. So at that time the universities had not yet started teaching engineering as a regular discipline. Of course, when the Guindy thing started in India, at that time the French had already started. So the regular engineering education had started in France, but it had not yet started in England. At that time we started. But unfortunately that earlier start did not help us, because our total focus was on preparing young people who could use the products designed outside, who could help maintain things which were designed by others. For example, the whole of the upper canal system which the British designed, of course at that time for their armed forces probably, they designed, and then of course they set up the Roorkee place for training technicians who will help them. Right? Ultimately it became Roorkee Engineering College, and then of course the IIT.
Somewhere that the technical education in India was founded on the priorities of the colonial masters, which were not ingrained into solving the Indian problems as such.
In fact, we have never solved our problems. The basic problem is that our engineers do not solve our own problems because they don't recognize a problem. I'll give you one example. 3 years back, a group of final year engineering students from China visited India. They also visited a tribal area in Gujarat. Now, in that particular tribal area, there is a fruit which is produced, and what the tribals do is they take that particular fruit, break it open, and the skin of that is ultimately sold to the pharmaceutical industry in Ahmedabad.
Mhm.
When these people went there, they saw that the breaking was being done by the 10,000-year-old method of using stones, and it was being done manually. These Chinese students, they asked a question: can we go back to China and design a machine which will do the job?
Okay.
When this was conveyed to me by the trust which was organizing this particular visit,
Mhm.
I was ashamed. I was ashamed that we must have visited. You see, many of our engineers must have visited that area. It is not that that area is so inaccessible that our people do not visit. Thousands of Indian engineers in the British time and afterwards must have visited that place. Nobody thought about it, because we have not learned to solve our problems. We don't recognize a problem.
Mhm.
We do not know that this problem can be solved by technology, and we do not do it. We only recognize engineering which is used for solving the British problems or American problems or Korean problems or Japanese problems. Of course, problems are common in humanity in many cases,
Mhm.
so many of those solutions are useful for us also. But they have recognized the problem, solved it, developed a technology which we of course use. The thing is, we do not recognize our own problems. We do not know. When we see something, we don't say, well, I know technology, I can solve this particular problem.
So how GTU has then, after that incident, diversified into identifying the engineering problems which are scattered across the length and breadth of Gujarat?
We have started a project, Vishwakarma project. In fact, this project was visualized by our Chief Minister.
Now the
Yeah,
Prime
he is still the
Minister.
Chief Minister for a couple of days. I think probably he will resign today or tomorrow, I don't know. But he visualized this particular scheme, Vishwakarma Yojana.
Mhm.
Under this, we are saying that our students should go to villages and select a problem over there. Like, we send them to the industry
Mhm.
and they go and find out a problem there. So we say that the students may go to the villages and try to develop them into what the Chief Minister, Shri Narendra Bhai Modi,
Mhm.
calls urban areas.
Okay.
So he says that the rural areas must be converted to urban areas.
Mhm.
That is, they must get all the amenities which allow a life to be lived in a more dignified manner. So we must use technology in such a way that villagers are also able to live a life of dignity. And for that, whatever technology is required, we must see that it is available over there.
This is a real fantastic point which I want to reiterate for our viewers. Like a tangible shift in the viewpoint, the point through which you are looking at a problem or an opportunity makes all the difference. In Gujarat, as Professor Agrawal said, that when a Chinese group came and tried to solve a problem of the tribal population, a 10,000-year-old method, engineering process, re-engineering, that probably initiated the Vishwakarma project by the Honorable Chief Minister of Gujarat at that point of time. So this is quite of paramount importance. The entire debate and deliberation of employability has to be relooked into under this light. Employability in what context, skills in what context. Professor Agrawal has been raising the question about the type of engineering education we have been providing, the focus of the engineering education ecosystem which has been there in the country. Now when there has been a major change in the government out here, we would be expecting some major changes in the engineering education across. I would now request Professor Agrawal to talk about more about, sir. One is obviously solving the local problems, the regional problems, and the problems of the SMEs as a whole, which Gujarat has taken up very, very well. But Gujarat is also known to be the seat of the top-notch laboratories and top-notch institutions like space research, atomic research, and defense and all. So what has GTU been doing to create an ecosystem for cutting-edge research which will make the country quite self-reliant in these areas?
The first thing is that the research at university starts at master's level. So the master's thesis and the doctoral thesis are very important. A student spends 1 full year in master's on his thesis. In PhD, he spends 3 to 4 years. If a young man's full year or 3 to 4 years are not used effectively, then it is a problem for the whole nation. And what we have said is there is no reason why our master's and PhD thesis should not be as good as that of any other university in the world. And so we have started a process of ensuring that there is a continuous mentoring besides that by the supervisor. Of course, the supervisor at the master's thesis or the PhD thesis is the person who provides all the mentoring. What we have done in addition is we have about 192 international professors whom we have appointed as the adjunct professors at GTU. So the professor may be sitting somewhere in Europe, but then we have over here a PhD student and his supervisor. Now they get a third person in the loop. He is called a co-supervisor and he is sitting, let's say, somewhere in Europe. When the student does the work, he will send a copy through email or he will talk to the first person by Skype, so that that person can also have a look at the work that is being done. Because the adjunct professor is working in exactly the same area in which the student is working, there is no additional workload on that professor, except that he has to talk to the student for a couple of times. He has to look at his emails, but because they belong to his own area, he would like to know what is happening about it. Our student has two advantages. He now has, of course, his own supervisor. He shows the work to the co-supervisor also, and if the work is not of adequate standard, the co-supervisor will not permit it to be published, because now his name is to be there on the paper. Now, our people do not have that kind of experience and stature as of today. We are trying to build our professors, but today, naturally, they will be happy if their name is also there along with that of an eminent professor on a paper. So it is a win-win situation. The professor over there has the advantage, he has an additional student, and there are some additional research works which will go to his credit. We have the advantage that our work will be of a good standard and it will be published at good places. One problem that Indian conferences have is that they are not on internet. Their proceedings usually will not be available on internet. Therefore, there is a greater possibility that the work will be repetitive, it may be partially copied, and therefore many of our conferences are not of that highest standard. Yes, we have some conferences which are very good, I would not deny that. Similarly, it is not really that in the West every conference is of the highest level. But then the point is the research work over there is available on the internet. So therefore at least it cannot be copied if it is not at a high level. So the advantage that we get by joining with the adjunct professor is that many times if he is going to a conference taking his own paper, he may take our paper also. So more of our papers will be published in international conferences. And as more papers are published, there will be a greater visibility. And the possibility of our work being second rate will not be there.
So what about the research problem of our very own research institutions like DRDO, CSIR, ISRO? What kind of synergies is GTU tying up with our indigenous institutions?
Okay, you see, as I said, we are trying to appoint adjunct professors from great institutions in India and outside.
Okay.
Now, recently we have signed an agreement with IPR, the Plasma Research Institution, which is trying to develop, as you know, the energy by fission.
Okay.
Now, energy by fusion. So, the point that I am making is that as far as we are concerned, we are trying to develop a relationship with all these great institutions of India.
So you're trying to create a enabling ecosystem, research ecosystem, whereby indigenous institutions will take advantage of.
Exactly. But you see, there is a little bit of a problem in our country. We have Brahmins amongst institutions, and we have.
So this is quite interesting what Professor Agarwal is mentioning, that there is a caste system even amongst the institutions. So please.
So, for example, most of our good laboratories will like to associate themselves with the Brahmins like IITs, and naturally they would like to avoid the ordinary universities of India because they are considered to be non-Brahmins. Well, I guess by our work we will ensure that we will start being counted amongst those Brahmins over a period of time.
I hope that Professor Dr. Avinash Chandar, Dr. Radhakrishnan and Professor Brahmachari amongst others would be watching this program and would be granting that what GTU has achieved in the last 6 years is worth something, at least the direction which they have given to their students and the kind of ecosystem they have created, and the 75% of self-reliance and defense which Raksha Salhakar is talking about is probably possible only when such large number of students do come and start innovating. And the problem, the caste system, which probably the Indian voters have rejected this time, and probably the great good intellectuals and people at the helm of affairs would be giving a second chance to our institutions like GTU, who are really doing such fantastic work, never unheard of. In just 6 years of time, whatever they have created is really stupendous. So through this program, I would like to appeal to give a chance to the 16, 18 odd state technical universities which are administering around 4,000 engineering colleges and creating some 10 lakh plus engineering students. They have the metal in them, they have the innovation is stint in them. So this is an appeal through this program. I would like to give it to the higher ups.
I'll tell you one thing more, for example. You see, my university caters to more than 95% of these technical students in Gujarat. We have some great institutions like we have IIT Gandhinagar, DAIICT. They are all being supported, of course, by the central government. But ultimately, they cater to not even 5% of the total technical students who are studying over there. We have some great policies which are being formulated by all the national institutions of India. But I'll say one thing. I have been at the helm of affairs for 4 years and I know about what is happening at my university. I can tell you emphatically, till today, GTU has got not 1 rupee from any national institution, be it UGC, AICT or anyone else.
So you mean to say that the entire disbursement is to a selected few?
Not 1 rupee has come to an institution like Gujarat Technological University, which caters to 95% of technical students in Gujarat state. I do not know about others. I know about Gujarat Technological University. This is the way we are trying to develop national technical education.
So you have been talking about that the entire research, R&D disbursement and the disbursement for technical education is only for the select engineering colleges. That I infer from you that GTU has not received a single penny. How do you, what do you like to appeal to the new government which has come? What proposal you would like to make to your till now Chief Minister and now the Prime Minister of the country as the Vice Chancellor of the Gujarat Technological University? Because this is the same pain which is shared by Professor Khandal at UP Tech, the same pain which Professor Nalinaksh Vyas at RTU and all other technical universities. So what would be your proposition?
You see, ultimately the national institutions will have to work out a fair way of supporting students everywhere. For example, I guess per student cost at national institutions may be of the order of some rupees 10 lakh per student. Per student delivery by the national institutions to technical students in universities like mine is zero. Of course, the families of those students are supporting them, because we have now this SFI system which is dominating. So they may be paying anything from 60,000 to 90,000 rupees every year. But please understand that this is peanuts as compared to the amount which you are spending on students in national institutions. And it is fair that at least something similar. You cannot spend that kind of amount probably on all the students. The nation is not rich enough. But at least a reasonable amount per student has got to be made available to technological universities also. We are 120 crore. We will be able to develop products which will be equivalent to the products being developed by the whole of the developed world the day we unleash our creative spirits. It is not that we do not have the intellectual capacity. It is only this that we have not unleashed it. And therefore, I am very hopeful that the whole world will benefit from what we are doing. Because after all, if they have been able to think about some products which have made our life better, if we also start thinking, the whole world will become better. Because we have to make our own contribution, which we have not done. Now, we have been trying to interact with the rest of the world, because for a university to become great, it is necessary that it should have international footprints. We today have probably the largest program in the country of international exchange of students, or internationally sending our students.
Okay.
You see, we call it exchange, but right now it is our students going out, because
on behalf of the university.
On behalf of the university.
This
so
is
now
very exciting for the students who would be watching this, that GTU sends its students abroad, as many of the private universities have made this impelling proposition.
You see, we send students abroad for a very specific purpose. Many of the small universities in India send the students abroad for what I would say as a tour.
Educational tourism.
Yes. We are not doing that. We send students to US, to Canada, to Germany. And when they go there, they spend there 6 to 8 weeks and study in that university. What is more, whatever they study, we give credit for that in our university. Like when they study there and pass a course, for that course the university gives them credit, so they do not have to study that particular course at GTU. So it is an effective method of their going through a system of education over there. The university pays for the entire teaching. Like when a student goes and joins a foreign university on behalf of GTU, when we send them over there, they do not have to pay the tuition fee. All the fee for learning that particular subject or working in the laboratories and library, that is borne by GTU. They only have to bear, of course, their expenditure for stay and all that. But the tuition fee, the learning is entirely free. So that is the process that we are doing, and a very large number of our students spend their summer in the
I think
American.
It's not the students of Gujarat, but students from all across the country would love to flock at the door of Professor Agrawal to seek admission in one or the other GTU affiliated college. So with such impelling propositions you have created at GTU, do you welcome students from across who have not passed the GTU entrance examination, or are you planning to merge it with the AIEEE and others?
It is already merged, you see, because as far as students in Gujarat are concerned, they also have to go through JEE. Then only they get admission to the colleges under GTU.
So you don't have a separate entrance examination?
No, we don't have a separate.
So you are the first state technical university who have done away with?
I don't know, but at least we have done so.
Okay. Because the other state technical universities students have yet to pass their.
No, there is no separate technical exam.
Okay.
The exam is JEE. Of course, when the students are to get admission in colleges in Gujarat,
priority is given.
Then what we do is we prepare a merit list based upon some percentage of marks at their 12th and some percentage out of JEE, right? But then we use a percentile system whereby we try to normalize the various boards.
So can the students from other states come who have appeared in JEE and who are having the eligible marks can come and aspire to study in one of the GTU affiliated colleges?
Okay, you see, the admissions all over Gujarat are controlled by a central body called ACPC, that is Admission Committee for Professional Courses. Now, the thing is that 25% of seats are with the private management. In these 25% seats, the students from outside the state can also get admission.
Okay.
75% of seats are given by merit at ACPC, and therein there was no quota till last year for outstate students. I understand that the government is thinking of making a small quota available for students from outside in that particular
So there was a
list.
phenomenon in some of the states like UP and Andhra Pradesh and others, Maharashtra in particular, that a large number of seats in engineering were left blank. The economic recession of 2008, the very year GTU got formulated, it had somewhere in the minds that engineering is not picking up. Did such a thing happen at GTU?
The first thing is, it has not happened over there. Like, I have heard that about 200 colleges have closed down in the other states. In GTU it has not happened. But then my feeling is that we require a large number of engineers for solving our own problems, provided they are capable of doing so. The only thing is, we do not require engineers for only supervising the labor. So the day we are able to produce engineers who can solve our problems, there will be no shortage of jobs. In fact, we have problems which are required to be solved by us in every area, in every hospital, at every railways, bus stand.
So there is a lot of hope for engineers in this country, for engineering education
Exactly.
in this country?
It is the engineers who will have to build this country. For example, you look at solid waste management system. We have not devised our own systems for managing that. We are right now borrowing the systems from foreign countries. But as far as we are concerned, go to any village or any small town, you will find kachra lying all over the place. The reason is, we do not have solid waste management systems of our own.
And which are cost efficient, capital
Exactly.
efficient.
So therefore, we have to study all those things. In fact, the other day, two of the students in a college devised a solid waste management system for their own college as a part of their final year project. And I went there particularly to encourage them, because these are the kind of things that we have to encourage. You see, why civil engineering students should not solve these problems? In Gujarat, there are 149 small towns. The government is thinking now, this year, of establishing some kind of solid waste management systems over there. Now, why is it that our young civil engineers cannot do it? These are problems which are quite within the purview of our own engineers. They can do, they know the technology. Only thing is, they have to apply their own mind to solving our own problems. There is no need for us to go to Canada and say, will you please tell us how to manage these systems, so that we will implement them over here in our villages.
We would be closing this show shortly, but as we see that you have an agenda for the entire engineering education of this country, which is ailing big time. What would be your 5 points of revamping engineering education in this country?
The first is, all our education must become design oriented. Right now we have been following what is called the analysis methodology. The synthesis, the design is missing.
Okay.
And therefore, all our learning processes must become design oriented.
So the moment design comes, we'll go into the lookout of the design problems nearby.
If you have time, I can give you examples. You see, for example, we had that famous Buddha statue in the lake in Hyderabad.
Yeah. Yeah.
I hope you remember an American company was called
Mhm.
to do that particular job. Now we have applied mechanics courses where we teach structural engineering all over the place.
Mhm.
We have people who have done PhD in IITs. Then also, when we want to have another big statue of that kind, we again go to Americans and say, will you please help us?
Mhm.
Why is it that we are not able to do so ourselves?
Mhm.
The reason is our educational institutions have never really worked in the industry. If we start working, for example, if a young PhD student had been working on a problem, if a professor had been working on something like that, you begin with small statues, go to bigger ones, you develop a confidence, you are able to do big jobs. After all, the technology that we are teaching is exactly the same that is being taught elsewhere. Why is it that we are not able to use the same technology to solve our problems?
There's the giant iron statue of Sardar Patel. Who is doing that?
Well, we have an American company which is helping us design
Again.
So that's where my question
It
is,
pinches.
in 30 years, we are again back to square one. I mean, 30 years back in Hyderabad we did it. Now again we are going to do it. Are we ever going to solve these
So
problems ourselves?
if we start today, how long will it take that the next statue comes? We would be doing it our own.
Well, it is not really, please understand, the engineer who is going to design, for example, for us, I do not know him, must not be the same engineer who did the Buddha statue,
statue.
because he might have retired. These are some young engineers who have taken their degree and who have the confidence to do it. Now, I am sure that we have many engineers in India who have studied the same part of engineering that these young persons from there would have studied. The only thing is they have the confidence to take on this job.
So
We
young
do not have-
Vishwesvaraya you are looking for who can confide and who can design it.
Exactly, because our young engineers have never been given the challenge of doing any design of their own, and therefore we have this situation.
So this we come to the design oriented engineering program which will produce the competency to solve our own indigenous problems so the next statue can be erected
Exactly.
and designed by a very own company of ours. So next point.
Secondly, all our teachers have got to be associated with some industry or the other.
Okay.
I therefore have proposed, for example, to the fee regulatory committee that if they are determining the fee for the for the students, based upon how many teachers are required, what their salary is, and let's say they say the fee has to be this 100%, say 60,000 rupees, allow the fee to be increased by 3% or so, so that every college can send 5% of its teachers for 6 months to the industry. So they should go to the industry, work like an engineer with full responsibility for 6 months and then come back. This will change their outlook. See, you cannot say, I will have an engineering college where I will teach practice orientation and the teachers don't know it.
The comforts of academia should not lure people from dirtying their hands back in the industry.
Exactly. You see, for example, the systems in every country are different. But in US, for example, professors get salary for 9 months a year. They don't pay for all the 12 months because they make the professors free for 3 months to go and work in the industry. And the professors are happy because in the industry they get much more salary. So they don't go on a strike and say, well, why don't you pay us for 12 months? Because they are very happy when they are given freedom to work for 3 months outside. It is because the industry also finds it beneficial to have them for 3 months because they have the design skills which many times their own engineers do not have. So the thing is, they have a system which they have built over the last 150 years. We have to build our own system. So
Fair enough, sir.
right, so that is the thing that we have to do. The third thing is internationalization. We must ensure that our students and our faculty members are able to go out, see what is happening in other universities and come back. Because as long as we are going to be familiar with only our system, we will continue with it. For example, if you will look carefully, it is only South Asia which is missing from the first 200 universities of the world. Malaysia is there, Saudi Arabia is there, Thailand is there, Taiwan, Singapore, South Korea of course are there, and China and Japan are there in a big way. How come only South Asia is left out? It's not only India, Pakistan and Bangladesh are also in the same boat. So there is something missing in our system, and we will not be aware of it till we go out and have a look. So internationalization is very important. I say that at least
Internationalization of a representative section you are advocating, or the whole bunch?
I would say that at least 10 to 15% of our students must visit some university or the other, spend a semester there and come back.
That's a real fantastic proposition.
I also want that at least 5% of our teachers every year must go and present their papers in international conferences. Till we are able to build our conferences to the same level, let's send them out, let them see what is happening in the world. Because unless we become aware of the requirements that are required for excellence.
So benchmarking ourselves
Yes.
to the international level,
Exactly.
and then customizing it back at our own institutions.
Exactly.
Fantastic, sir.
So that is the fourth thing. Therefore, I want is that at least 5% of the teachers going out and ensuring that they become aware of where the world is. Right now, we are able to send, of course, our top civil servants. Our principal secretaries and secretaries will go out. But you see, they are not to teach in the class, they are not to be there in the workshop, they are not to be there in the lab. So, policies determined by people who are not going to be there on the ground turn out to be many times policies which are not effectively implemented. You see, the trouble is, for example, all our policies are determined by people who are not really there in the classroom, who are not in the trenches, as you say. And if at all they get any advice, they get the advice from our eminent IIT professors, which is very good. But the IIT professors are not aware of the situation on the ground again in universities like mine.
So this is probably the fourth point you want to say, that synergize the entire higher technical education space. I remember, sir, when IIT Kharagpur was celebrating its Golden Jubilee celebration, the Honorable Human Resource Development Minister at that time said that IIT should be seen as islands of excellence where they are integrating with the local engineering colleges. So is something of that sort on cards you would like to propose, where IIT Gandhinagar, being a premier institution, also associates with GTU, and then its excellence goes down the value chain?
You see, what you are telling is right, but this is not happening. Now,
But this will be your wish list.
It was in 1956 that we established IIT Kharagpur. Right? So, the issue of their involvement with other institutions is naturally interesting, but the fact is it has not happened till now. Now, it is something that we have to visualize. Why is it not happening? The trouble is that they are trying to do something on their own terms. For example, there is a big project called NPTEL. What has happened is that IIT professors have come together and prepared a large amount of material which is there on the web for use by the students all over the country.
Yes.
Now, when I joined in 2010, I had 6 colleges which had very poor results. I had half a mind to close those colleges because, it was a scandalously low pass percentage. Because you invite a student to join engineering and then you throw him into a situation where he is likely to fail. What is the purpose? So therefore what I did was I purchased 6 CDs. I spent 2.5 lakh rupees on that from IIT Bombay of the NPTEL courses of that time, and created 6 labs, 20 computers each, so that if the students were not satisfied with their own teachers, they would sit in those labs and look at whatever course they had, and it was given by eminent professors, so they should be able to benefit. But we found, unfortunately, that the students did not take much of an interest in using it. At 6 different colleges, this whole experiment was done. We did not succeed. Now this year we are starting another experiment, because we know this whole material is really useful, but how to ensure that it is used. So this year we are starting a new experiment. In one college, the entire class will be divided into 2 sections. In one section we will use the NPTEL video, and there will be a teacher sitting with them. The video will be split into parts. Every 10 minutes after showing the video,
your teacher will come and facilitate
a teacher will ask a couple of questions, and then we will see what happens. The other class will go through a normal teacher. So we want to see what the difference is. Here we have video lectures given by topmost teachers of IITs, and we want to see whether it creates a difference.
So the synthesis of the IIT knowledge resource pool should get somewhere trickle down to the State Technical University system. That might be one of the charters.
Yeah, you see, we have to think about why it is not happening. I don't know, because as I told you, we did one experiment, we failed. We are now doing another experiment. The point is, these are things where we have to think. I think quite a lot of money has been invested by the central government on NPTEL project. And in case we are not able to use it effectively, then it is a question. Because these are issues that we have to ask. The last thing that I would say is, we are not using ICT effectively in our classrooms. The thing is, somehow we believe that the old method of teaching is okay. It is not so. It is not so. Today, in 1 year, you can study much more by using ICT effectively than what you could do otherwise. Now, this is something which somehow has not been accepted in our bones by our system. And therefore,
there might be a sense of insecurity coming out, because academia as a whole, like the relevance of the classrooms and all, is that the reason, or the budget is the reason, or what?
In fact, budget should not be the reason, for the simple reason that today this technology is not so costly. The reason is our ancient way of purchases in the government system. We are purchasing a software, and purchasing services is much more difficult than purchasing hardware. Right? So that is one problem. But in private colleges, probably they don't understand that this small investment can take them a long way. So therefore they have not done it. Somehow we have to force the whole thing. You see, for example, e-library is not being used effectively. And the reason is, we have provided e-library only because AICT forces it upon us. We have not done it the way it is required. For example, I was teaching in a Canadian university. Now it is 4 years that I came from there. But even today, they allow me the opportunity of accessing their library. Right? Because they allow this opportunity to all the teachers and adjunct teachers and all that. So I still go on having the opportunity. Sitting here, I can access. My professor, even at his own home in the same city, cannot access the library. You see, he is teaching in a college,
Because
let's
it
say
is
in
IP
Rajkot.
restricted and it is not on the web, and
How can it be? Why is it not IP restricted in Canada or US? A professor,
so old archaic mindset, you would like to say that.
I don't know. You see, this whole thing is topsy-turvy. We should provide more facilities to our teachers than are available over there, so that we are backwards in a way technologically. So we have to make a leap ahead. How can you make a leap ahead if you will go on giving them tools which are third rate?
So here we come to the close of this Why Engineering episode with Professor Akshay Agrawal. What we unraveled in this full-blown interaction with Professor Agrawal, that he has more questions to ask than answer. Our viewers would be finding it quite interesting, but this is probably the ancient way that, as Professor Agrawal himself said, Prashnena Jnanam. So he is asking the right questions, and somewhere asking the right questions has enabled him to craft and curate some of the finest processes at GTU in a span of 6 years. He would be graduating the third batch of his students only in this year, when the Chief Minister of his state has taken up as the Prime Minister of the country. Professor Agrawal has very interestingly explained about the need to restructure, to re-engineer the entire engineering education in this country. And being a doer, it seems that he is quite firm that a paradigm shift has to come, where a design approach oriented thing, where solving the original problems of the country would have to come to the forefront. This is a paradigm shift. This is a very key central thought in all his interaction, which we have seen. So for all our viewers who are trying to take admissions into the engineering colleges this year, I think it is a really good time to take up engineering as a career, because engineering is going to see a paradigm shift with Professor Agrawal, the Vice Chancellor of Gujarat Technological University. The experiments which he has done in Gujarat, it is very sure that these experiments would be emulated across the country now, and a whole lot of indigenous approach in solving India's problems would come to the forefront. So engineering as a profession, as a fulfilling career, no doubt is going to come across. As far as the courses are concerned, the entire paradigm of a research-based system, where Professor Agrawal has made GTU as an innovation hub, where he has sensitized the students about the patents, which something even researchers after attaining their PhDs don't know about the same. And then research and innovation-based entrepreneurship, and then comes the employability. He has somewhere turned the whole curve. It's very important for the parents who are watching this episode, that the entire purpose of engineering is not to pick up a IT job, a white collar job out there. Engineers are meant to solve problems. Now if your kid has that propensity, then and only he has to go to the engineering as a career. With the changing geopolitics, with the changing of a lot of things which are happening across the globe, the kind of jobs which we are having are plenty might not be that in surplus. Jobs will be there, but only for those who are ready to dirty their hands. And Professor Agrawal is also advocating of sending the faculty members the engineering faculty members who had taken the comforts of academia just to evade the dirtying of hands on the shop floor and on the other engineering side. Internationalization, as he says, that we won't be the frogs of a well. We want to benchmark with the global standards and then create our own universities. And he has been quite vocal and quite disturbed and quite concerned about the kind of apartheid which is exercised in the India's higher technical education space, where funding doesn't go to the tier 2, tier 3 level of institutions just because they are positioned as inferior or somewhat like that. So he calls for a larger synthesis, where premier institutions like IITs and NITs work in tandem with the state technical university, which caters to the biggest demand. So such kind of synthesis we can expect in times to come, when the state technical university is going to take a predominant role than the premier institutions over there. And last but not the least, the votary of ICT, the use of information and communication technology, which makes education accessible. Any lecture, anything, it can be at your desktop, in your tablet, by the use of ICT, so that knowledge can be available anywhere and everywhere. So this was really a fantastic episode of Why Engineering. It has set the tone of entire re-engineering of India's higher technical education space. We thank Professor Agrawal for his candid confessions and candid assertions which he has made about very few vice chancellors have the courage and the guts to come on camera, come on a national television and talk about an ailing system which we all try to hush hush under the homilies, under the very other things. We hope that अच्छे दिन आ गए हैं, and we had with us Professor Akshay Agrawal with us. With this, thanks a lot. We'll be back again with yet another Vice Chancellor and yet another state in this series. Do send in your candid feedback to editor@engineeringwatch.in. Thank you.